Hi, I'm Jay. Today we're tying basic jigs and answering a few viewers' questions. Stay tuned. And we're back. So, good morning. I've been tying just for a little bit today, and then I got a couple questions, one this morning and a couple that I kind of had on my list for a while, and they were all similar, and it had to do with the type of vise that people are using. I have plenty of vise in my collection, a whole bunch of them. They're all different, right? We have some that are parallel to the table and locked in place. We have some that are adjustable. We have fancy fly tying vises, and I have my old trusty tried true Universal 2, which I've been using since a kid, right? I've discussed before my feelings on the Universal 2, being I believe that the Universal 2 is the perfect vise for tying jigs. Now, I'm in central New York. I'm tying jigs primarily for pike, walleye, that type of thing. Nothing too big, right? So if I was tying bass jigs, we've seen my peak vise that I got specifically for those larger hooks. I have a couple other vises in my collection that will also take those larger hooks. I have some in the collection that I use just for travel, just because they're smaller, a little bit more compact. But the two main questions that we've had is, one is measuring the hair when you don't really have a location to measure it on, and this was a result of using a vise that was at an angle. And the other question is tying on an angled vise. There's a million ways to do things. I try not to. I like to show you my way, but please keep in the back of your head, there's all sorts of ways for us to tie jigs. No one tire. I don't believe no one tire is absolutely perfect. I've always explained my style is more of traditional. I learned in the 70s, and that's what I promote, I guess, for lack of a better way to explain it. So let's switch things over, because today I'm tying just regular bucktail jigs. I'm just filling the inventory as typical, right, as a jig tire, right, production jig tire. We tie boring jigs, right? We're just filling the inventory. We're tying the basic bucktail jig that the stores are going to buy. Occasionally we get some fun orders and we can do some real fancy things, but today, basic bucktail jig. I happen to be tying 1/8, so I have 1/8 ball that I'm going to put in the vise. And the vise I have here today is an HMHST. I can adjust. I'd hate to, hold on. Let me mark how high it is, because I have this on the table, and exactly where the Universal 2 would sit. So if I take my old U2 and I stick it behind, So the tip of this might be up just slightly. So when I put it back in, I'll just make sure, well, maybe if I raise this the way it's supposed to be. So they're about the same. It's hard to, if I put it up to the table, that's where it would clamp on. So that looks about even, where the tips align, right? So on the ST vise, this is my newest travel vise. I love HMH vises, and I got this specifically for travel. The jaws in this are the smaller jaws for tying flies, but for a 1/8 hook, this will work just fine. So, but let me take this out of the clamp, just so I can raise it up just a little bit. So as we can see, here's the vise. Very basic. It does rotate just by turning the lever, but since I don't have it parallel to the table, as it rotates it won't be level, but it does serve the purpose of being able to look at the sides of the jig. As you can see, I can adjust this and make it parallel, but for this conversation we're going to keep it angled as we talk about how to go about tying jigs that are using a vise like this. How can we measure the table, be consistent? Okay. So the main thing, even if we don't have a vise that's parallel to the tabletop, we want to place our hook in the vise so the hook shank is parallel. And that doesn't look too bad. Now, because this is an angled vise, if I turn it, it doesn't really help me. I have to angle my body to see if it's in the vise, and it's still hard to see if it's actually parallel to the tabletop. So maybe just by leaning back, I have the luxury of looking at my video screen, so yes, that's not too bad. We'll begin by using, this is a 2/0 round nylon thread, which is my traditional go-to type of thread for jig tying. 1/4 or smaller than 1/4, I like to use a 2/0 thread. Larger than 1/4, I like to use size A, rod wrapping thread. So we lock our thread on, keeping the hook shank parallel as we wrap allows us to place those threads parallel. Even if it's an open wrap, the threads themselves are fairly parallel. If the hook shank was at an angle, like so, as we wrapped, we'd be wrapping the top of the hook shank would be wider. The bottom of the hook shank, the thread would come together at a point. Kind of, it would fan out and be a poor technique. It would be poor thread placement, and therefore a weaker jig. Right, your hair would pull out. You catch 1 or 2 fish, the jig would be destroyed, etc. And when we're tying like that, when we're tying at a disadvantage, I believe that we tend to start making mistakes and overcompensating for those mistakes. So if I was tying the thread on and it was fanned out, I might overcompensate by either gluing the threads, using a glue or a head cement in between steps. I might overcompensate by making the collar wider, which is something we've talked about as well. So You know, my collars I like to be nice and compact and neat. So I take my pinch and I'm just restacking the hair like normal. In the placement of the first pinch will kind of dictate where the rest of whatever else you're going to place on here, your second pinch, any tinsel and whatnot. So I always talk about the tail being the length of the body, so the hook shank, the length of the hook shank past the bend of the hook, right? So since this isn't parallel and I don't really have any marks on my vise, what we can do is you could eyeball it, but then after you do a dozen or so, you're going to find some discrepancy depending on how I move my chair a little bit. I might be at a wrong angle. So fly tires, what they've always used, and I forget the name of this tool. It is a dental tool. I have an old one that I've had forever that I actually painted myself, but these you can find them. They actually can be pre-marked. Dennis uses this to measure, I don't know how deep they drill, I don't know. But this is marked with just 2 black lines. So on a dry fly, you know, we're measuring a much shorter distance, but this just happens to be the length of this hook shank. So if I take my pinch and I put it up there, I might adjust it a little bit, but I can measure just to make sure that past the bend of the hook, the tips of the hair are the length of this tool. You can do the same thing. This happens to just be a tool that I created just to use for myself. Those long skinny bags that you get the crystal flash in, as you use up all your Flashaboo or crystal flash, it kind of drops down in the bag. This just helps me reach down the bag and grab it. And this is just a little bamboo skewer. You could see I've had this so long it's actually broken, cracked, and I just took some thread and lashed it back together. But you could do the same thing. You can just take your stick, you can mark the stick if you want, but I can just put my fingers where the length of the hook shank is, and then there you have it. That's how I measure my tail, to make sure the tail will be the length of the body past the bend of the hook. So I change my grip one last time. Try not to drop my scissors. Keep this pinch very tight throughout the whole process. And we can lay this in place, lock on our tail, our pinch, couple wraps towards the bend of the hook, couple wraps back towards the head. And there we have it. Now we can take our next pinch. I'm doing black and white jigs today. Again, we're just going to first remove all those broken hairs and short hairs from the base of the pinch, and then I can restack. I do remove any hairs that just don't look right, maybe some that have a broken tip, or if you have one or two that are just like really sticking out, like they don't want to stay in the bunch, I'll just toss those away. I might take a few out if the pinch feels a little thick. But once I'm happy with my stacking, a lot of short hairs in this tail. I don't know what is up with this tail. So now I have the black on there, and we know that it's measured correctly. So I still put my hand behind the black. It just helps me see the two colors against my hand. When I take it away, I'm kind of focusing on the tabletop. So it sucks getting old. Eyesight was absolutely perfect till I hit like 50. All of a sudden I'm wearing cheaters. But I've switched my grip, keep this pinch nice and tight. Wraps towards the bend of the hook, and then walk it back up to the head. I will remove my hand just because I want to look to see where my thread placement is. I have a hair sticking out here. I'm going to leave it because as we walk the thread back, it'll cover that. Just making sure that my top wrap and my bottom lap aren't out of line, but everything looks good. So I'll just finish this collar. I'm going to walk the thread down, like I said, just to capture that stray hair, and then walk it back up to the head, then down to the middle, then back to the head. And then we'll finish this off like normal with a loop a size A thread of a different color. Walk it down about halfway and then back up to the head. We'll finish this collar with head cement, but I just wanted to take this out of the vise and we'll take a quick look at it. How'd we do? Oop. So that collar looks nice and compact. It has a nice little pyramid type shape to it. Not too dramatic, but there, you know, it does get a little wider towards the head and a little smaller towards the body. And then how am I going to do this? Let's compare it to one that I did right before this, and we're going to see how the tail, let's do it this way, we're going to see if the tails match, right, because we want to stay consistent. So put this back in the vise like so. Is that straight? Yes, it is. And then I will put this one in the vise in the forceps. I don't know if my camera is 100% in line. It might be tilted a little bit to my left. But if I line, here's the heads, eye to eye. I'm trying to look away at the screen to make sure. But here's the heads, eye to eye. How do those tails look? Here's the head, eye to eye. How do those tails look? Collar looks pretty nice on this one as well, right? Very nice jig. Can I do it underneath? Does that make a difference? It's hard to say. How's that? That's probably the best picture we're gonna get, right? But the tails match. The tails match up, so we're staying consistent. I could sit here and tie another dozen. They'd stay fairly consistent. But keep in mind, like I did say, like if your chair is, if you get up, you walk away, you get another fresh cup of coffee, you come back, you sit down. If your chair isn't exactly in the same spot, if you were trying to eyeball it every time, the angle that you're looking at could be off just by a hair. So that's where using a tool, some sort of tool to measure that hook shank. Dental tools have been used since the beginning of fly tying. For measuring. There's also a clamp that was used, a bulldog clamp, which I believe was used to clamp an artery, right, during surgery, something like that. Doctors out there, medics, RNs, you know, if you know exactly what I'm talking about, dentists, if you know what the heck this thing is called, you know, I'm pretty sure it's to measure how far down they've drilled into your skull, right, into your jaw. You know, because if it's not deep, you know, if it's just deep enough, they want to go a little bit farther, right? Is that how dentists are? I'm not a fan of the dentist. Never have been. It's stressful for me. Let's just put it that way. I'm a good patient, but it's stressful. All right, too much information. Here we go. So, any of our medical professionals out there that know what the hell these things are called, put the information down below. But the bulldog clamp, that was used for wrapping feathers, holding onto your line when you had to let go of the spool, etc. So as tyers, we've always got our tools from other types of hobbies or professions, right? Thread by itself, you know, back in the day, thread came from your wife's mom's girlfriend's sister's sewing kit, grandma's sewing kit, right? Scissors. I can't tell you how many scissors I have in my desk drawer there from way back when that are specifically for sewing. And they've come out of my mother's sewing kit. They've come out of grandma's sewing kit. And that's just the tools that we had. But I hope we answered some questions. By all means, use whatever vise you can get. Just keep tying, right? That's all we're advocating for here. You don't have to have a fancy antique vise like a Universal 2. You don't have to have a super expensive vise. You know, HMH vise, you can spend $400 or $500 easily on a pretty fancy vise, a vise that will last you forever. If you're a young tyer and you're looking for a vise that will last you forever, an HMH vise is a very good choice. But like I said, for this example, we're tying an HMH ST. I think they're around maybe $250 tops. And I bought mine a few years ago. It was a little bit less expensive, but I use it primarily for travel. I have a base for it, and then I have the C-clamp depending on the type of table we're tying at. But it's my go-to travel vise. Before that, my travel vise was a Wolf. I don't remember the brand name, but it's a small one from Wolf. Same idea, you know. It's just got the lever to lock the jaws, and you can adjust the head to make it parallel if you're tying jigs, or at an angle if you're tying flies. I'll try to get some photos of different vises. I got some old ones too that they actually bent, that were permanently angled, but they bent the eye to make it permanently parallel. But I'll try to get some pictures of some of my the vises in my collection. I hope this answered the questions. I know I kind of do one of these because none of these are scripted, but it's just us having a conversation. So as always, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Feel free to share any of our videos, as it does help increase awareness for the channel. Check out the website, jworthhandtied.com. I actually have a new Universal 2 for sale on there. A really nice clean. I don't think it got much use at all. And then I did my thing like I always do to kind of spruce them up and make them run as best as they can. So check that out on the website. But I think that's going to do it for us today, guys. Any questions, always put them in the comments. I'll try to respond best we can and incorporate a lot of the questions just into our videos. So until next time, guys, grab whatever vise you can find, keep tying, and tight lines.